So I am the nerdy kid in the top left up there. This is about 1985. And as you can tell by my dad's smile, he was super thrilled to be in Olin Mills on the Saturday instead of working on the house, which he was remarkably good at. He was a pretty handy guy for being an accountant. He built an addition on the house, he put a wood floor in, he built a bar in the basement, which makes it pretty strange that he wouldn't let me take shop class. He believed that shop class and college were mutually exclusive, as most of the country did believe back then. And there's no way that his firstborn son was going to be in a shop class with a bunch of stoners and flunkies and failures. So I went to college, and I flunked out. And I floundered for a couple of years, and then I bought an old Volkswagen bus, and I drove that bus and moved to Los Angeles. And both that bus and I were broke a lot. And I had to learn how to fix it myself, which I was unaccustomed to. I had never really had the opportunity to use my hands very much. A mechanic lent me some tools after he realized I had no more money, and eventually I ended up taking the engine out and putting a new engine in it. And this was a huge step in my personal development. It was the first time in my life I actually learned. Until then, high school, it was all memorizing, and college was, for me, was memorizing. And memorizing, in my world, is not learning. So, after realizing that, holy smokes, this is the first time I've ever learned, I have to go back and I have to learn everything I could possibly learn. I went back to college, I got my teaching degree, and my whole mission was to get in front of as many students as I could and prevent them from making the same mistake of wasting high school by memorizing the whole time. So, fast forward 15 years, and I'm teaching at an urban school in Cleveland, Ohio, and the school decides to take a chance on this really cool idea called Wonder Week, where for 1 week, every adult in the building gets an opportunity to share their passion with the kids instead of teach the subject they were hired to teach. There were all kinds of cool opportunities for the kids to sign up for. It was like photography, calligraphy, knitting, swimming, hiking, all these cool things. And I decided to expose 12 kids to the wonders of turning wrenches on vintage Honda motorcycles. So for 1 week, I was going to have these kids tear these motorcycles apart. They were going to see how internal combustion worked and see the gears and all the cool stuff and get their hands dirty, put it together. We were going to finish with a kickstart celebration. And within the first 5 minutes, I realized I was in trouble because not one student had ever held a tool. And in fact, one student was holding the business end of the screwdriver instead of the handle. And I really was unprepared. And so for the next 5 days, every screw got stripped, every nut and bolt got rounded, most of the parts of my motorcycles were broken, and my tools were ruined. And at the end, there was 1 million pieces of motorcycle on the floor, and I had to use a snow shovel to scoop it all up into the trunk of my Toyota, take it all home and rebuild it myself. It was the biggest failure ever. I was super bummed. But then, I was a geometry teacher at the time, and for the rest of that school year, those same 12 kids were different. And it turns out in that Wonder Week where I failed, and I thought we all failed, they actually learned, and they learned a ton. And they learned by using their hands, and they learned by doing, and they learned by failing. And that was a huge thing for me, because then I saw these kids that were volunteering in class where they never had before. They were usually hiding behind the student in front of them. Now they were volunteering to go up to the board and diagram a geometry problem that they knew they weren't going to get correct. It is unheard of for a high school student to do, to volunteer to fail in front of their peers. Their attendance rates got better. Their grades improved. They were totally changed. And the thing that made the big difference was that ancient, cool, sexy, rusty motorcycle. That's what woke up their love of learning. Just like for me, it was that ancient, rusty Volkswagen that woke up my love of learning. And imagine if we had in this country, if we were just stocked with high school graduates and college graduates that had the confidence to fix their broken world around them because they got to learn with their hands at some point. That problem-solving mentality is probably the most sought-after goal in all of education. Most teachers would be thrilled to know that their student finished school and went out into the world with the confidence to fix the stuff around them and to solve the problems around them. A teacher would be thinking, I know that kid's going to be okay. That kid's going to succeed. So, after realizing that I had found the Holy Grail, I left the traditional classroom. And my wife and I started a nonprofit in Cleveland called MotoGo. And we take vintage Honda CB350s to schools all over Cleveland. And we put the tools in the kids' hands and we encourage them to fail. We encourage them to try anything they can try. They take these bikes apart, they break the tools, they break the parts, and it doesn't matter, we've got a million parts. And so we let them experience that failure and we let them experience that problem solving. And it's not problem solving on a piece of paper. It's not problem solving on a smartboard. This is real problem solving with something tangible right in front of them. Whether it's a bolt that they stripped, it's a problem that they caused and they have to problem solve and they have to figure it out, and it uses their hands, it uses their brains, they communicate with their team. It's a big deal, and it makes a huge difference in these students' lives being able to fail like this. And the one part of this that's so important is letting the girls do this. You know, this country seems to believe that girls can't or shouldn't be getting their hands dirty. And when I start a class at an all-girls school, and the first thing I say is, you will get an A if you fail. They look at me like I'm crazy. But they're not given the chance to fail. Girls are held to a level of expectation and perfection in our culture that is unreasonable and causes a crazy amount of anxiety. I had a student at a school come up to me and he said, Coach, I don't know what step I'm on. I don't know what to do next. And our employees are called coaches because we believe that students have relationships with their teachers and they have relationships with their coaches, and they're different. And students and coaches have a relationship that it's got a little bit less anxiety because there's no grade involved. And he said, Coach, I don't know what step I'm on. I said, bring me the manual. And he brought it over, and I looked at the bike, and I said, you're on step 9. And he looked at me and he said, I don't know how to read. And this was a sophomore in his spring semester, so probably 16, maybe even 17 years old. And I had to swallow the sadness I felt immediately, and I read him the next couple steps, and he went on his way. And I left that school for the day, went to another school, came back to that school a week later to continue that MotoGo class. And I opened up that classroom door, and there was a woman standing there with tears in her eyes, and she gave me this big hug around my neck. And I was like, who are you? And she said, I'm the reading specialist, and I have been chasing Joseph for 2 years, and he's evaded me at every turn. And yesterday, he sought me out. And when I asked him why now, he said, Miss, I have to build a motorcycle. And then I had another student at another school, at an all-girls school, Lillian, who had perfect grades. She didn't want to go to college. She signed up for MotoGo, not knowing really what it was about. But by the end of the semester, decided that she had to be a mechanical engineer. So she went to Ohio University. She was the only girl in her mechanical engineering major, and certainly the only student that had ever used any tools. So she had a leg up on everybody. She finished that degree and immediately went to the Ohio State University, where she is currently getting a combined master's and doctorate in quantum heat transfer. And, right? It blew my mind. And that's not the shop class that my dad was envisioning. This wasn't a class full of stoners and flunkies. Shop class is for everyone, especially for the girls. Now, the one thing that I keep coming back to in this is the opportunity to fail. It's so important that we continue to give our students the opportunity to fail, and fail in a safe way. There's no memorizing happening in our shop classes in MotoGo. It is safely fail and safely learn. And it expands everything in that kid's world. And by keeping me out of shop class, my dad kept me from the most important learning of my entire life, and that was failure. And failure is the linchpin to problem solving. Without a problem, without a fail, there's no problem to be solved. And problem solving is at the root of every single skill that humans have ever developed. And the best place to learn how to fail, the best place to learn how to problem solve is shop class. And so I leave you, parents, and I leave you, teachers, with a difficult challenge. And that is to let your kids fail. Thank you.